Well, hello, John and Sierra. I appreciate Sierra's contacts with me often. I've had a couple text messages, and that's very much appreciated. I'm just an old guy, going slower, so I don't respond as fast as I used to. Last week, I got to go down and spend a few days with my sister down in a place called Eagle, Idaho, which is now a suburb of Boise. She took me on two tours. One was to a raven sanctuary, interesting place. I saw some birds I'd never seen before. But the more fascinating place to me was the Jump Building, which stands for Jack's Urban Meeting Place. And in that, he's a farmer. He started Simplot, and they made a lot of money making French fries for McDonald's. So one of the things he did over the years as a farmer was collect old tractors, or just not throw away old tractors he might have had. They've ended up with nearly 100 ancient tractors, some of which still work. And it was interesting because they have a tour on Wednesdays every week, starting at 10 in the morning. It takes about 2.5 hours to tour all of the machinery. It's in a parking garage, and these tractors are set around the outside edges of the parking garage. And each one's got a little plaque. But what was most interesting was that the man who took us on the tour was a mechanic that worked on these tractors for the last 30 years. And he had a lot of history and a lot of understanding of what they were doing and what all the pieces were on. So you start off in the basement where it's just with farming tools that horses would tow were drawn by horses. And so the first steam tractors that were built had two purposes. One was a stationary engine to run things like machines to do not combine, but threshing types machines like that would take, something to run a big belt to the side. And then the other machines, very few of them were to pull those different implements that the horses were pulling, just to replace the horses. Well, that's the way it was going for a while. And then World War One came along, and gasoline engines are now starting to get into place where they're available and working pretty well. And so some people started making smaller tractors, much smaller, to compete with the steam ones. Well, of course, they were a lot less expensive. They weren't actually gasoline, they were kerosene or diesel engines on most of them. And that went along just replacing the steam tractors. So now you've gone from horse to steam tractor now to engine tractors. And then several companies, as the war ended, started making tractors. They all thought they had a better idea. And there's some very unusual tractors there at the site. One of them, the back wheel is actually a drum, goes across the back, has spikes in it. It's for kind of chopping up the soil, kind of interesting looking thing. Anyway, uh, the biggest issue was as these bunch of tractor people started making tractors, then there became a tractors that just never gained much people to buy them. And then some merged together, and down through the line, there came to the tractor that had the first 3-point hitch. The man that invented the 3-point hitch had patented it, and but he would let other people use it. About 2 years later, he got bought out by a bigger tractor company, and they were really after that hitch. So then they excluded the use of the 3-point hitch on anybody else's machine. And so he spent a couple years gaining enough money. He bought his tractor back, and then he took the patent for the 3-point hitch and made it available to everybody. So all tractors with 3-point hitches, that's how they originally started and how they can use it without any problems. So the tractors changed from pulling something that was made for horses to pulling pieces of machinery made for a tractor that had a 3-point hitch. The next big change was row cropping, which is what farming is today. And that's where you can move the wheels, the back wheels, and usually the front wheels, either in or out, to fit in a row between crops. So the tractor didn't smash anything while it was harvesting or planting or whatever else. So that's the evolution of tractors from horses to where we are today. And of course, today there's unique or specific purpose tractors designed for a specific function, and machines for specific function, like Combines, which you're familiar with. They are a machine that harvests the crop and then separates the seed from everything else and saves the seed, discards everything else. So, excuse me. Some of those machines today are nearly $500,000. Um, the one I saw on a video that's not too far from here, the head's changed. In other words, the part of the machine that actually cuts the whatever it is in the field, whether it's oats or wheat or corn, whatever. There are different kinds of front ends, so they harvest correctly. So a corn one weighs 60,000 pounds. That's just the front piece that goes on the combine, and it's 24 feet wide, and it costs $270,000. Anyway, that was fascinating to me because I'm into machinery and that old stuff, so that was a good part of the trip. Anyway, think about you folks often up there and still hoping to be there on Thanksgiving unless we have poor weather or we run out of gas. I don't know which might come first. Anyway, glad you think of me often. I sure think of you every day in prayer. So looking forward to our time together and I'll send more later. Bye.